I'm delighted to have a chance to introduce Mike. It's a privilege. Mike Bradley graduated from UTC in 2007 with a degree in mechanical engineering. So we're proud that one of our alums have come back and to give this talk. He's a licensed professional engineer and works for Westinghouse Electric Company as a resource manager, leading a team of engineers at 4 different locations to design, analyze, and service major components for the commercial nuclear power industry. His team has been fully remote since March and has been growing, which has provided unique insights into the job market for new graduates and the changes in the hiring process since the global pandemic started. His presentation for today is titled The New Normal, Beginning Your Engineering Career in a Post-COVID-19 World. Michael will share his own insights as a hiring manager for new engineering graduates and discuss keys to success in your first job and share ongoing changes to the engineering profession due to the global pandemic. So please help me to welcome our own Michael Bradley.
All right, thank you, Dean Pack, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. It's a real honor to be here, and I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I can do that. Okay, so you should see PowerPoint slides. Is that working correctly?
Yes, that's what we see.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, again, thank you for the introduction. I wanted to come and share some insights, as Dean Pack mentioned, about the engineering world now that we find ourselves in. So specifically wanted to share from I guess a student perspective. So you're finishing up your degrees, working towards that degree. And I know that the job market is a top thing on everyone's mind right now. So I've had some recent experience in that area, and I really wanted to share that and hopefully give you some valuable feedback, not just for how you go out and get a job, but once you do, how can you be successful in this new environment we find ourselves in? So my slides are really just to support the discussion. So unfortunately, not a lot of pictures, but really this is a talk, and I want some feedback also throughout it. So I'm happy for questions to come in at any time. I understand also at the end we'll have a question time as well. So really quickly, I'm just going to give a quick about me and about Westinghouse. This presentation is not about me necessarily or about Westinghouse, but I think it's valuable to understand where I'm coming from as an individual and as an employer, so that then you can better understand some of the points I'll make later. So we'll talk after that about 3 things. So getting a job, how you succeed once you're there, and then also my crystal ball section. So thinking ahead about how the world is changing and how you can look ahead and then better be prepared for your career as you go out into the working world after graduation. Okay, so first, a little bit more about me. As mentioned, I graduated in fall 2007 from UTC with a major in mechanical engineering. I had actually started interning in the summer before that at Westinghouse. I see Dr. Heastand is on the call here. So actually, Dr. Heastand had some colleagues there at Westinghouse and helped open my eyes to the fact that Westinghouse even had a location in Chattanooga. So I continued to work during my last semester and then started full-time in January 2008. So at the time, I was a thermofluid or thermohydraulic analyst for nuclear steam generators. So that's the component you see there on the right. It's a major component within the reactor system of a commercial nuclear power plant. So the steam generator cools the reactor and then generates steam to then turn the turbines and make electricity. So I worked in analysis for some time. I got into some fabrication oversight. We were building steam generators for our AP1000 nuclear plants that were going to be built in China and also in the US. So I spent some time in Korea. I'm doing fabrication oversight. Got my PE license around 2012. And then around 2013, I was made the lead engineer for one of our projects. And around that time, I started realizing that I really enjoyed supporting the team in completing their tasks. And I found myself actually doing less and less of the analysis. I found surprisingly that I really enjoyed that. So in 2017, I moved into a management
In
position.
any case, is that like watching paint dry? Is it like watching?
Sorry. So in 2017, started in a management role. Right now have about 16 engineers in the group, and they're spread out between Chattanooga, a few different locations in Pennsylvania, and then also have an engineer in Italy right now. So that's about me. And then about Westinghouse, I'm just at a very high level. So Westinghouse is a global company, but based out of Pittsburgh. Our headquarters is in Cranberry Township, so it's just north of Pittsburgh. As of the time of this slide, we had about 9,000 employees. We have done some recent mergers and acquisitions, actually. We're located in 19 different countries, have offices and manufacturing sites all over the world. And we are a full service provider for the commercial nuclear power industry. So we design, manufacture, and deliver our own nuclear fuel. We design and build many other components, including the steam generators that my group focuses on. We go out into the field and modify and repair plants during their outages. And we even work with decontamination and decommissioning when plants are ready to be disassembled and taken out of service. And you see there on the bottom left, that's my group in my department, so engineering services. All the different areas and business units within Westinghouse pull engineering resources from our central engineering department. So engineering really forms the backbone for most of the work we do at Westinghouse. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of background on me and Westinghouse. You understand where I'm coming from with some of the further discussion here. So first I wanted to talk about landing your first job. I know that's probably a big thing on everyone's mind right now. Hopefully many of you have already secured a job, but if you haven't, keep trying and keep working. And I've got some feedback that I think will be helpful for you. Of course, things have changed due to the pandemic, and I wanted to focus specifically on some of those items also. Okay, so first, I'm about to talk about advice for getting a job. So I'm sure you've been given advice so far. What things have you heard so far? I'm happy to take feedback here, or I can imagine some of the basics you've probably heard, trying to work on your grades, ensuring you have a good resume, you're prepared for interviews, trying to make personal connections. None of that has really changed at the bottom line. So everything that was true about working to actually secure a job is still true now. But I think there are some things that have changed. So maybe we add to that list, if anything. So what has changed? COVID-19, or the coronavirus, the global pandemic, has pushed remote work ahead by several years. And what I mean by that is many companies were already pursuing remote work opportunities for employees, some more than others. I'd say in some industries, we probably pushed ahead by decades, not years. And others, maybe it wasn't a big change. But as a whole, everyone has moved ahead. You can see I'm here in my home office now. My team has been remote since mid-March. So I've actually not been in my office since March. What's interesting though is that it's not predicted to return to pre-COVID levels. We'll talk about this a little bit more later, but even here in Chattanooga, the Chamber of Commerce has polled employers, and the vast majority don't expect to ever have the same in-office workforce that they did prior to the pandemic. So what does all this mean for hiring? Well, it means there's uncertainty about what the future looks like. It also means that companies are still trying to figure this out, probably just as much as you are. So that may not be as evident, as you're out there looking for job opportunities, but realize there's uncertainty not only on your side, but with the employer as well. but I'm going to show you how you can actually work that to your advantage by helping to fill that need. So let me talk a little bit about what hiring has looked like at Westinghouse and for me during the pandemic. So as Dean Pack mentioned during the introduction, I have been growing my group. We just hired a new graduate into the group last month. Many other managers within my same engineering department are hiring, and as a whole, engineering within Westinghouse is understaffed. Actually, we've been fortunate to be growing during the pandemic. I will go ahead and note a lot of those positions are in the Pittsburgh area, but they're certainly available, if you're looking for an opportunity. Okay, you should see the PowerPoint slides again, is that right?
Yep,
okay.
That's great.
I apologize. I think I was probably around the 200 applicant discussion and talking about the phone calls. Okay. Okay, so as I mentioned, received many applicants. We did some initial phone calls. Those are, in our case, like a 30-minute phone call. It's very informal, and it's just to get some more information about the candidate and also to give them more information about Westinghouse as a whole, and then my group specifically, just to make sure that it still sounds like a good fit versus what they've just seen in a job posting. So from there, we went to video interviews, which is a little more formal. We actually use behavioral interview type questions. So if you've done any mock interviews, these are things like, tell me about a time you worked on a team and worked together to meet a tight deadline. So went through video interviews like that, and then went to a final candidate who started last month from home here in Pittsburgh, up in the Pittsburgh area. So we literally mailed a laptop, this new engineer, on a Monday morning. He fired it up. He and I had a video chat to get him oriented, and then he's been working with the group ever since. So with a process like that, things certainly change with respect to what you need to be prepared for an interview. And also you want to be able to stand out when you do get one of those phone calls. So how do you do that? So here are some of the specific things that I was looking for. I'm going to let you in on a secret from my perspective. One of the key things that I'm thinking as I'm looking to bring on new engineers, especially in this environment. And I know I'm speaking specifically about remote work, but as I mentioned, even if you're working or applying to a position that's not 100% remote, or may not even be remote at all, almost invariably, you're going to be interacting with peers or customers that are also separate from you. So the principles apply just by nature of the day and age that we live in. So what was I looking for? The biggest concern I had and still have as a hiring manager, and it's a concern shared by the other hiring managers that I work with at Westinghouse, I've worked with them on many of their interviews, is how is a new graduate going to come in and get integrated to where they can be successful and positively contribute to a team when they're disconnected from them physically. So if you can come in and alleviate the hiring manager's concern about that, you have just given yourself a huge leg up in actually getting a position. So what does that look like? So one thing I was looking for was prior experience with remote teams. And that doesn't have to be work. As I was hiring, many of the graduates or many of the applicants had graduated back in the spring. So it was really interesting to hear how they had been working on their senior design projects and then suddenly told to go home, you're not coming back to campus. And then hear how they manage that, how they still work together as a team to finish their project in some fashion. The other thing I'm really listening for is a clear, confident speaker and someone who doesn't appear shy. It's okay to be shy. We're engineers. We're not known for being super bubbly all the time, but you certainly don't want to come across shy on the phone. And the reason is, especially like in my case, where I know that someone's starting completely virtually, there's not going to be people walking by their desk. No one's going to come by and say, hey, are you stuck? Do you need anything? I've got to have confidence that the new engineer is going to be comfortable reaching out for help, letting me know if they need help, and putting themselves out there so that you're not just kind of virtually lost in the background. The other thing I'll mention is that personal connections certainly do help. Many large companies even have referral programs. So if you know someone that works somewhere, often you can ask them to submit your resume through one of those programs. Or just if you know someone that can put in a good word for you, and maybe they know about opportunities that are coming up, or maybe are not evident, at least on like an external job posting. But I will say that this is not a requirement. Sometimes I know it can seem daunting, especially if you're in a new town and you don't really know anyone. The engineer that I hired had no personal connection to Westinghouse at all. So there's that data point also. And finally, yes, we do look at LinkedIn. Sometimes I think that's a question of, do employers really use LinkedIn? And I did, but I'll tell you how. After I identified several engineers to do those initial phone screens with, just the 30-minute informal discussion, I did go out to see if they had anything on LinkedIn. All that was to do is to see if there's maybe something that wasn't on the individual's resume that would be a good thing to ask about. Just more items to build a discussion on. So it certainly, in my case, wouldn't have impacted whether you get that initial call or not. So I touched on a lot of different things, specifically a lot about remote work, but I know you may have questions about the hiring process, what hiring managers are looking for. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and we can either do that now, or I'm happy if we want to hold them to the end before we go on to the next two sections.
You know, Mike, we do have a question that could be related to this topic that came in through the chat. Evan asks, how do you rate the importance of extracurricular activities like clubs, internships, and projects versus maintaining a good GPA? Obviously, both are important, but what do you want to see as an employer?
Yeah, great question. So I would say, I know the answer you don't want is that they are both equally important. So I won't say that's the case. For most companies, there's usually some type of a threshold established for GPA that that you definitely want to meet. And those are, I don't know that they would even be published all the time. So you do want to maintain your GPA, and you're all UTC students, so I know you're going to be doing fine on the GPA side. So honestly, when I get applicants, the extracurricular activities for me are really about seeing if fit is right for the type of work we do, and that helps a little bit. So what I mean by that is I'm usually not concerned about, can you do the technical work? I'm confident that anyone we bring in that has graduated and gotten their engineering degree can be successful in the work we do. We have great engineers that really enjoy mentoring and working with newer engineers. So I never really worry about that part of it, actually. What I do worry about is, if it's really going to be Westinghouse involved lots of travel. So if travel is something that you enjoy, and I see that on your resume, that could help to know, okay, this individual wouldn't be turned off by the travel. Other things that can help, some of our jobs are more hands-on than others. You'll see that in places. So if you've got hobbies or have participated in extracurricular activities that show that that's an interest to you, that can help a hiring manager know that's going to be a good or not. So it's not about, everybody wants someone to be successful and to be able to come and make a positive difference. So you're looking for indications that would be the case. So I would say extracurricular activities are always helpful to include on your resume, especially as a new graduate. If you don't have a lot of work experience, those can highlight a lot of your more diverse background than you see, say, from just talking about. Okay, were there any other questions? And hopefully that answered it. I'm happy to answer a follow-on as well.
Yeah, we have a couple more, it looks like, in the chat. Is it possible, let's see, I wonder, this is from a professor, asks if it's possible for you to email samples of entry-level job descriptions for new electrical engineering students. This includes required and helpful qualifications, skills, responsibilities.
Yeah, that's a good question. I wouldn't specifically have, I would not specifically have like the qualification side of it, especially for new graduates. What I can do is I can point you to the Westinghouse job postings, which it's westinghousenuclear.com, and it's you go to jobs and you can search actually every job Westinghouse has in the entire world. We all go through the same system, and you can filter those by experience level. So any position that is specifically looking for or open to new graduates, and you can filter by that and look not just within Pittsburgh, but for all the Westinghouse locations globally. So that would be the closest probably I could give you to what, say, Westinghouse is specifically looking for. Like I mentioned, often our concern is not so much with a new graduate, do you have the right technical background? If you've gotten your degree, there's some evidence that you've utilized parts of that degree, say for senior design or an internship. I'm always confident that then we can get you where you need to go technically with our regular mentoring program.
Appreciate that. Another question related to looking at LinkedIn. Other than LinkedIn, do you look at personal information in social media related to the applicant? And if so, does what you see there have an impact on whether or not you hire an applicant?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can just speak personally. No, I do not look anywhere else but LinkedIn. Maybe that's because I'm old-fashioned and not as tied into social media as I used to be. But no, all I did was use LinkedIn.
Great, thank you so much. And then it looks like one last question on this section. So you say you got 200 applications for that one position. What are some things that you could recommend for students to stand out sort of at that point when there's that many applicants? What do you look for in picking out the ones to move forward? Yeah,
sure. So in our case, I work closely with a recruiter, and we have an entire recruiting team within Westinghouse. So my particular opening or position is matched with a recruiter, and they support me through the process. So it's a lot of information. I was given an Excel spreadsheet, and you can imagine columns and columns and rows of data. Things that can help you stand out. Of course, you want to make sure you're certainly not the only criteria. I'm sorry, I keep getting the internet connection is unstable, so I hope you can still hear me. Another thing that can help is highlighting your experience outside of school, if you have any, and if not, that's okay. Many places, Westinghouse being one of them, you submit a resume, but you also kind of submit a digital resume. Either the system will pull information out of your resume, or you type in a lot of it, like where did you last work, things like that. So that can help you stick out, because if someone's given a list of 200 names, many of them just say a school name for, say, prior employer. So if you did have prior experience, say at an internship, even if it's not the most recent, that's at least going to stick out. So I might see, like in our case in Pittsburgh, I see a lot of University of Pittsburgh. But if there's a company name there, at least then I see something a little bit different. And so you can kind of jump out that way, especially when there's that many applicants.
Excellent, appreciate it. Okay, that's all the questions for now.
Okay. I'm happy to answer more questions along those lines as we get further along. So stop me at any time. Okay, so that was about landing a job. So then we'll move to the second part, how to actually succeed once you get there. This is broken into two sections. So first, I want to share just in general some of the traits that I've observed from our new engineers coming into Westinghouse and starting out. Traits that have helped them be successful in their career, almost across the board. And say there's a kind of like the rules of success that I've seen positively. What do I mean by success? That means that you're getting a variety of experiences in your career. You're seeing different opportunities to develop, to grow, to learn more, and to do different things. And that ultimately you're happy in your career. And then you, of course, the opposite is, people that find themselves frustrated, not getting where they want to go, not seeing the opportunities they want. So we'll talk about that first, and then we'll talk about some that are specific to remote work also. So these sound very simple, deceptively simple. So I've got some stories to help explain. So there's 3 points here about succeeding. And these, again, I'd say are the rules that I've seen followed by our most successful new engineers starting out. So first is say yes. It sounds really simple. This does not mean saying yes all the time, being a yes man, doing things you don't want to do, working the weekends, working tons of overtime. That's not what I mean at all. So what I do mean is being open to opportunities and looking even for diverse opportunities once you get in your job. I know that still sounds kind of vague, so let me give you a specific example of an individual who definitely demonstrated this trait. So I'll use a different name, say Zach. Zach was a new engineer in our group, actually started out doing thermal hydraulic analysis, which is what I started out doing. He did a great job at it, but at some point mentioned, hey, I'd like to try some different work at some point if that was an option. Usually we kind of focus engineers in disciplines, but he expressed that interest and thought, okay, let's give him an opportunity. A project came open in our more mechanical design area, working with drafting to design and develop parts, material specifications, work like that that's very different from analysis. We assigned it to him with a mentor to work with him, and he did a great job. So now he was kind of wore two hats. So then we had some programming that we needed to do. Developing a new tool, we realized it made sense just to write a program for it. Somebody remembered that Zach had programming skills, maybe it was C++ on his resume. We knew he did fine when we threw him into the design work. So we said, hey, could you maybe write this program? And he said, yes, I'll give it a try. He did a great job. From there, it kind of snowballed. You can see how the story goes. We needed someone to go to a site to actually do some physical inspections. Normally, we wouldn't send someone that's an analyst that typically does analysis, but he had done the mechanical design work. He had been open to new opportunities, so we sent him to site. He did a great job there. Where this all ends up with, and talking about opening doors to new opportunities. So at the time, we were not doing remote work hardly at all. It was on rare exceptions, and it required senior management approval. We were kind of behind the times. Zach came to me at some point and said, I really love working here, but my spouse needs to take a position in another state as part of her education, and I'm not sure what to do. Is there any way I could continue working, but just from out of state? Normally, that would be, there would be a lot of red tape to go through, especially at that time. But because he had been so diverse, so open to new opportunities, he was involved in a lot of different projects, and a lot of people knew him. It was really easy to just go through the process, get the approval, and he ended up working remotely and was very happy. And we were very happy to have him continue to support the team. So just saying yes, being open to opportunities, opened all sorts of doors for him. And I've seen that time and time again. Okay, so number two, non-technical, or I hesitated to say soft skills on here because I know no one likes to hear that term, but it is a fact. One of the most common barriers that I've seen for newer engineers to advancing in their career is difficulty either working with teams or just not recognizing the importance of it. As you get more experienced in your career, then it's expected and it's needed by your employer and by the rest of your team for you to be able to then turn back and help others who are coming along in their journey, newer engineers, mentoring, guiding people, being a lead on a project versus just the one doing. And not being able to do those things, or not doing them well, or trying to avoid things like that, like mentoring or leading a team, that eventually can become a barrier to getting where you want to in your career. So all that to say, it's not only about the technical work you do, and just remember that as you move along in your career. And finally, the feedback one. It's real simple. You need feedback. None of us are perfect. And the only way we can get it is typically if we ask for it, or at a minimum, listen when we receive it. So ask for feedback, be thankful for it, and then use it and apply it. And if you do that, you will continue to progress. That could seem like it goes without saying, but it's very easy to become defensive. I'm sure if I got feedback after this presentation that it was boring, I'd immediately get defensive, even though I'm the one sitting here telling you not to do that. So you have to just get past that, be thankful for whatever perspective you get and learn from it, and then ask for it again. All right, so that's the three big ones that I've seen. A few more that are specific to working remotely. I mentioned, one of the biggest concerns is that a new engineer comes in and kind of gets lost or doesn't get fully integrated into the group just because no one's going to walk by and see you sitting at your desk. So one is proactive communication. That's 2 manager buzzwords in a row. But all that means is be the first one to call or to email, and keep your peers and your boss in the loop. One of the most common complaints that I've heard from our more senior engineers when they're working with some of the more junior engineers on the team is, hey, they do great work. I just don't know what the status is, and I have to reach out all the time and email them. To be fair, the perspective of the newer engineers is, hey, I'm doing the work, it's on schedule. Why would I bother someone to tell them that? And that's a fair perspective too. So just over communicate. You never know if somebody's wondering or not clear, so you can never hurt to over communicate. Number 2 is develop personal relationships. When we're remote like this, it's so easy to just email and instant message people all the time. I do it way more than I should. But if you have an excuse to reach out to someone, talk to somebody you've never talked to before, call them first. Even in an office environment, if you're just working with somebody across town, call them first. I've even called to say, hey, I'm about to send you an email, but I just wanted to call and introduce myself first. And that's even appreciated. This way you make friends throughout the company. And I guarantee if you call first and then you send that email, you'll get a quicker response and a much more friendly one. It always works. And then finally, working towards independence. So if you're going into any kind of a situation where you're partially remote or working from home, at first you're going to be saying, what next? Hey, I completed that task. What do I do next? And that's fine. But you want to be working towards, hey, I completed that task. Next, I'm going to do X. Is that correct? Or even better, hey, I completed task A and I went ahead and finished task B too. Now we can move on to the next phase of the project. So that's where you want to be going. So it takes time, that's understood, but just understand that's what you want to try to achieve. And that's the only 2 slides I have on the career success piece of this. So I'm happy to answer some questions on this section, or we can do some of those at the end as well.
A question, Mike, that came through. What are some strategies for asking for feedback or for soliciting that?
Yeah, great question. So it depends on who you're asking. Some companies and some cultures handle this differently. Some companies and cultures are very open, where you can very freely ask, hey, did I do that right? Or can you give me some feedback? I just sent this email to a customer. Should I have said this differently? Some things like that are easy to talk about, and as long as the culture supports it, just direct discussion. So I guess where it's probably where the question is coming from is, say you're a manager, you want feedback, like, am I doing a good job? Again, it's typically just ask. One thing I've heard people do that I think is always successful is especially during one-on-one conversations with me, they'll just ask, hey, is there anything I should be doing differently right now? Or, hey, do you have any feedback for me? That opens the door. And honestly, as a manager, that makes it much easier to talk, especially if there is something, maybe a deliverable was late, it made a project manager unhappy. That opens the door to then your manager can safely share that feedback with you, because managers are people too. And sometimes it can be awkward for us as well to share some of that negative feedback. With your peers, the best thing is just to develop those relationships, and often the feedback will come naturally. If you're open to feedback, you almost don't have to ask. What gets you in trouble is when you ask for feedback and then it becomes, the term I've used is water on a duck's back. So you see a droplet of water landing on a duck, it rolls right off and doesn't stick. If you ask for feedback, but then you let that natural reaction come in and start to be defensive or try to explain, well, I know they said that, but that will begin to shut down the conversation, and it'll make people less likely to feel like they can share feedback and it'll be actionable. So be open to it. And if you honestly ask, people will gladly share.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, last section. So thinking ahead, the engineering profession post-COVID-19. I recognize that the world is not post-COVID-19 yet. So I guess it's wishful thinking when we actually get fully past this pandemic. But we've already seen changes. So this is the crystal ball part where I look ahead and tell you what I think some of these changes look like. And why. Let me preface this with why. So all of you came into school with an intent to get a degree. You at some point picked, the type of engineering or whatever your degree is. And that was because you had a plan. Hey, I want to get an engineering degree. Like in my case, I want an engineering degree. I was thinking short term because I like mechanical things, like working with my hands, it makes sense. That's about as far as I was thinking. But you want to be thinking, okay, so I get the degree. Now what am I going to do with it? And knowing what the future looks like can help you make decisions so that then you get where you want to in your career. So let me share some of my thoughts, and then these might generate some discussion too. So first off, these are my own observations and opinions. They're not the opinion of Westinghouse. And of course, some of these are my guess as well about the future. But I mentioned COVID-19 pushed remote work ahead by years, in some cases decades. And in-office work is not going to go back to pre-COVID levels. There was a Chamber of Commerce survey in Chattanooga where 87% of employees were not expected to go back to, say, being in the office all the time. There'd be some remote work aspect. So that's across all industries, just across all of Chattanooga. So especially for engineers, we're often considered knowledge workers, where the work we do can be done remotely. You could even call that number higher. So what that means is that geographic location matters very little now. It was already starting to matter less. Westinghouse is a global company, and we work with people. I'm here in Chattanooga working with people in Pittsburgh and Italy. Now when everybody is at home, our entire engineering department is remote. The only difference is really the time zone you're in. Everybody is a green dot on our instant message system, and they're an email away. So what does that do to the future of work? So work-life balance and expectations are changing drastically. It's very common now. We can be on very professional, high-level business meetings, and there's a dog barking in the background. There are children talking. My son's bedroom is above me. We're fortunate we haven't heard him jumping around up there. So the line between work and personal life is really blurred. I have a corporate phone that has instant message on it. We're rolling out bring your own device so that anybody can put their personal phone on the Westinghouse system, and you can have access to your email and instant message, be available literally all the time. The tip here on looking ahead is just to realize this, that it's changing and it's okay. I, for a long time, especially early in my career, tried to separate, there was me at work and the time I'm at work, and then there was me personally in the time that I'm at home. And I didn't like it when there was any breach across that line. That's honestly just not feasible. And I've been actually much happier in my career when I've accepted that work and life go together, and a good employer will recognize that give and take and be flexible. We've done that a lot at Westinghouse. I have people that get up really early to work because they have a section of the day when they have to be with their kids. Some work later in the day because things get kind of hectic at their house around dinner time. So give and take is important, and just realize that it's there and that it's only going to continue as you get on into your careers. And then finally, we really do work in a global economy. So that's always been the case. But now that geographic location matters even less, you see more and more interaction between different countries. I mentioned we're a global company. I had a phone call last week with China at 9 o'clock at night. Not what I wanted to do at 9 o'clock, but then I had a phone call with the same people at 8 a.m. this week, which meant it was 8 p.m. for them. So there's give and take even there. What this also means, though, is you see a lot of changes, especially with how work is accomplished. And sometimes it can honestly seem kind of scary. So often technology gets shared between companies, even between countries. That can kind of be unnerving. It feels like we're in competition and we're, say, giving up our secrets. And I've actually got a story to share right after this, my last point. There are even engineering contractors that companies utilize. Westinghouse utilizes contractors in other countries to support some of our engineering work. That can sound scary too. It's actually been a very positive thing for us, and we've gotten more work because of it. So the bottom line is that things do change, and just realize that there are opportunities. So my last slide is going to emphasize that point. And if Dr. Houston is still on the line, this will be familiar to him also. So the picture you see there, the top left, the blue buildings, that is the former Alstom facility. It's over on Riverside Drive, downtown Chattanooga. You may not know that used to be a combustion engineering manufacturing site. So combustion engineering was actually a competitor to Westinghouse at one point. Had their own nuclear power plant design, the System 80, then became the System 80 Plus. At some point, combustion engineering sold. South Korea was looking to develop their domestic nuclear supply chain. And eventually that design ended up with Doosan, a heavy manufacturer and designer there in Korea. They developed it into what they call their OPR 1000 plant. And the one you see there on the right is their APR 1400, bigger version of it. So the first APR 1400 just went online in the United Arab Emirates this year, designed and built by Doosan, and then supported by Westinghouse. So Westinghouse purchased the engineering arm of combustion engineering, and the South Koreans still view us, as the original designers of this power plant. So we worked in conjunction with them on the UAE power plant, tons and tons of work for Westinghouse. And then even more directly, you can see there the picture in the top right. So that's a kickoff meeting in South Korea in 2014, I think. You see me there with the blue shirt. Our friends at Doosan wanted to partner with us to design a replacement steam generator for one of their local Korean nuclear power plants. So they brought us on as a partner, and almost like an engineering consultant for the project that actually just now wrapped up. So 6 years of work. It led to a second project for another steam generator with them. We've also utilized Doosan for manufacturing. You can see there at the bottom right, some of my friends at Doosan there. That was during manufacture of our AP1000 steam generators, which some of them are now sitting down at Vogtle in Georgia at the power plant we're building there. Also, interestingly, here in Tennessee, Watts Bar and Sequoia nuclear power plants have steam generators built by our friends at Doosan and then shipped over here. So selling technology to a foreign country, sounds kind of scary. Sounds like it could impact your job. Certainly that had, many impacts at the time. But we've just seen lots of opportunities also. And in many cases, I think the Koreans have taken that design where it might have never ended up, like with the UAE opportunity. So just closing out, you all have chosen an amazing career path. Engineering is going to open so many opportunities for you. I mentioned, you know, I did analysis, ended up as a manager where I don't even do as much technical work, but I enjoy it amazingly. We have engineers that go on into our fellow and consulting engineer path, where they then advise other engineers on very difficult technical challenges. We have engineers that go into commercial integration, marketing, project management, executive management. With that engineering degree, there are so many things you can do. So if you just realize the world changes, there are opportunities opening all the time. And as engineers, we adapt, and that'll get you where you want to go in your career. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm happy to stay on and answer as many questions as you have, and wish you all the best as you continue your education also.
Thank you so much, Mike. We appreciate it very much for the wonderful presentation and all the great information. We've had a couple of questions come through on the chat, and then I'll let everybody know as you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat or go ahead and raise your hand. That will work also. So first question is there a resume style that stood out to you when you were hiring this previous engineer, or just in general, a resume style that you'd recommend?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's always hard. You feel like you're starting from a blank sheet of paper sometimes. Honestly, no, there was not a particular style that jumped out at me. I've seen some very basic ones. It's almost like a Word file with a bunch of bullets, and I've seen some really fancy ones that even have, you know, links to social media and everything. For me, it really didn't matter. And in some cases, I don't know if it was due to an error or the individual didn't submit their resume, but their resume came through as like generated by our system. So it's, you know, the content is there, but it's not formatted at all. And really, for me, that didn't matter either. So it's really the content that's on it is what I was worried about.
Appreciate that. And then another question, do you have any insight as to how the job market is for international students and graduates?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm assuming that would be international students then looking to stay here and look for opportunities within the US. Is that right? Or I'll assume that and go forward. I can only speak for Westinghouse, I guess, on that one particularly. There are sometimes specific requirements, as you can imagine, like with some of our positions, we require that an individual can get unescorted access to a nuclear facility. That requires a huge background check, and you'd have to make sure that you would be able to, say, pass a check like that. It's a federally mandated background check. But Westinghouse has sponsored international students that then go on to become full-time employees. Actually, we have an individual in my group who was on a similar sponsorship like that. So what the market particularly looks like, I'm not sure. So in my case, if I didn't have that requirement about all the unescorted access checks that we have to do, that would have just been a follow-up discussion basically during an interview of, hey, you know, I would need some type of sponsorship as an international student. And that's something we've done before.
Thanks for that, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the things you did to go from being an intern to being offered a job at Westinghouse.
Yeah, that's a good question. So my story might exemplify a few of the points. Maybe he shows the opposite of some of them, but one, so I certainly had a great personal connection. So Dr. Heestand was my advisor during my time at school, and still worked with many of the people at Westinghouse. So I think I know it meant a lot to the people there at Westinghouse to know that Dr. Heestand knew me and worked with me, and at least wasn't ashamed to offer me up as an intern. So that certainly helped. Once I was there, the same kind of thing of saying yes, I think really did help me. So I started out as an intern, not really doing the thermal hydraulic analysis, which is what I started as a full-time employee. So it was often with internships, you probably, many of you have been here before, you can kind of get thrown on a lot of different projects. So I just kind of embraced that. I didn't decline anything that came my way. And as a result, I think I was able to get into some of the analysis work that ended up being my full-time job that I probably would not have ever done during an internship if I hadn't been as open to different types of tasks. Because honestly, it's not something we often task our interns with. But I did do that analysis and had a good experience with it and was open. And so then, that opened the door to actually a full-time job doing that kind of work.
Oh, thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Another question here about programming languages. And do you look for an applicant who has experience in a particular programming language? And if so, what is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you'll laugh about this, but we've actually often been intrigued by people that have Fortran experience. If you know anything about coding, Fortran is a very old code, but Westinghouse has been developing codes for a long, long time, and we still have many Fortran codes. So that was actually appealing to see if people had any experience with Fortran. But other than that, I would say there's not a particular one that stands out. Knowing that you have coding experience, period, is good because, as you know, it's kind of a way of thinking also, and it can usually be translated among different languages. We have a lot of different computer codes in a lot of different languages, so I wouldn't hone in on any specific one besides maybe Fortran.
Thank you so much for that insight, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
All right, looks like that's all the questions we've had come through the chat. So I think we're good with questions, and I know we recorded this, so it'll be available because there's lots of good information in here, especially the questions and answers and some of your experiences. Just on behalf of everybody, Mike, I say thank you so much for being here as our speaker and for taking the time to share your experience and insights. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate all the good questions and the participation.
Excellent. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.